Now that your content has been imported and organized, it's time to start editing. As a reminder, we're still working in the Nelson Teaser 2 project. This stage of the process is often called the rough cut, because you'll be placing your clips in the rough order you want them in the final project. The editing will take place in the appropriately named Edit page, so click that button at the bottom of the UI. The Edit page differs from the Cut page in that it not only has more editing tools for specific tasks, but many of the tools found in the Edit page gives you more precision when making adjustments to your edit. In order to maximize the screen layout for editing, let's collapse the media pool to half height so that our timeline has more room. Before you can start editing, you need to create a timeline to place your clips into. Whenever you create a new project, there are no timelines until you explicitly create them. One fast way to create a timeline is to drag any clip into the timeline workspace below. A timeline labeled Timeline 1 now appears in the media pool. I'll undo that by pressing Command-Z. If you're on Windows, press Control-Z. Often you'll want to create an empty timeline. Select the master bin, then from the File menu choose New Timeline or press Command-N for Mac or Control-N for Windows. You can also right-click in the media pool and choose Create New Timeline. Any of these methods will bring up the new timeline window. Name the timeline First Rough Cut. You also have the option to specify how many video and audio tracks are created with this timeline. However, changing the setting isn't really necessary, as Resolve will automatically add tracks for you as needed. Click Create. The timeline appears in the master bin, but it also appears in the Timeline Smart Collection in the Smart Bins area. If you're not seeing the Smart Collection, open Preferences, select User, and in the Editing section, make sure there's a check next to Smart Bin for Timelines. Editing begins by selecting your shots. You're not only selecting which clips to use, but which portions of the clips you want to use. Select the Bcam Interview Smart Bin. This is the bin we created that includes the sync clips from the previous lesson. Double-click the L07 synced clip to load it into the source viewer. This is the clip we created duration markers for in the previous lesson. If you scrub the playhead into the marker range, you'll see an overlay providing you with the details of the marker. If you don't see the overlays, click on this button in the upper right of the viewer and make sure that Show Marker Overlays is checked. Also make sure there's a check next to Show Zoomed Audio Waveforms, so you'll be able to make frame-accurate edits based on the words being spoken. And finally, make sure there's a check next to Live Media Preview. With this option enabled, you can skim over the thumbnails in the media pool and the source viewer will automatically update, allowing you to rapidly preview each clip. Make sure the playhead is anywhere within the marker range. I said in the previous lesson that you can only have one set of in and out points per clip, and currently the in and out markers are set for the second marker range. Right-click over the first marker and choose Set In and Out from Duration Marker. The in and out range now matches the marker. To preview the range, press Option / or Alt / on a PC. So right now I'm in a ghost town called Nelson, Nevada. With this range set, I now have a variety of ways to add it to the timeline. Let's look at the first method. Click and drag the image from the source viewer into the empty timeline viewer to the right, but don't release your mouse just yet. An overlay appears revealing several editing options: Insert, Overwrite, Replace, Fit to Fill, Place on Top, Append at End, and Ripple Overwrite. An overwrite edit is the default, as indicated by the highlight. Because this is the first clip we're adding to the timeline, most of these options will add the clip to the beginning of the timeline, regardless of the one you choose at this point. For now, choose Overwrite. The clip's video and audio are placed into the timeline at the beginning. Once a clip has been added, the timeline playhead is parked at the end of that clip. The next clip segment I want to add is where the alien hunter guy talks about Nelson being known for alien activity. Rather than skimming to the next marker, then converting it to in and out points, there's a much faster way. In the media pool, click on this button to switch to list view. If you look closely at the L07 sync clip, you'll see an arrow next to the clip icon. Click this arrow to reveal the markers. Drag the alien activity marker into the timeline and align its left edge with the first clip, then release your mouse. To play back the clips, drag the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and press the spacebar. So right now I'm in a ghost town called Nelson, Nevada. It's also known for alien activity. I think we're off to a good start, but we have an obvious jump cut that at some point we'll need to address. Often when I cut interview-driven material, I want to get all my interview pieces into the timeline in the order I want, so I can get a sense of how the story will progress. Only then can I determine what B-roll shots I'll need to refine and enhance the story. In the interview bin, locate and double-click the L04 clip to load it into the viewer. Using the jog control, scrub until the playhead is located just before his first word. You can clearly see this word in the waveform. This should be at roughly 51 seconds and 18 frames. Press I to set an endpoint. Let's play the clip from this point, listening for a good place to cut.
It's long been said that for the past 80 years, for reasons inexplicable.
With longer clips like this one, listening to a clip in real time can really slow you down. I often find it necessary to speed up playback using a trio of keys on your keyboard, the J, K, and L keys. Pressing L will play the clip forward, and pressing K will stop playback. Pressing J will play the clip in reverse. However, if you tap the L key, playback will reverse direction and play forward again. If you tap J again, the playback speed will increase 2 times. Tap J again, and the speed will increase 4 times. Press K to stop. For interview clips, I find that 2x speed is fast enough for me to get through the clip, but also slow enough that I can still discern the words being spoken. I'll shuttle toward the end of the clip. I want to mark out here when he finishes saying, "the rest of their lives."
The rest of their lives.
Press O to set an out point. We want to add this clip to the end of the last interview clip in the timeline. To do so, drag the clip into the timeline viewer and choose Append at End from the overlay. The clip is added to the end of the timeline. When you want to return to a clip that's already loaded in the source viewer from the timeline, press the Q key. Notice the source viewer now has focus as indicated by the clip name in orange and the orange focus bar along the upper edge of the viewer. Press Q again and the timeline has focus. Remember that shortcut. So far, you've used just the picture and audio to guide you when marking a clip, but you can also use timecode. Locate the L05 interview clip and double-click it to load it into the viewer. Using the waveform as your guide, set an endpoint just before he starts speaking. I happen to have the producer's notes for where the out point should be marked. If you know the timecode, you could just enter it. Go to the playback menu, locate Go To, and select timecode. Type out 1:40:18 for 1 minute, 40 seconds, and 18 frames. Then press return. The playhead jumps to that location in the clip. Press O to mark the out point. Press Option / or Alt / to preview the clip from in to out to familiarize yourself with the material.
Well, according to the government, there's no such thing as Area 51. Well, there actually is on a map. You can pinpoint it. But in terms of its relationship to alien activity, extraterrestrial activity, the government denies just about everything.
Let's append this clip using a keyboard shortcut using another method. In the Edit menu, you'll find all of the edit options that appear in the timeline viewer. But here you can see all the shortcuts associated with all the edit commands. Choose Append to End of Timeline or press Shift F12. Move the playhead to one of the edit points. During editing, it's often necessary to zoom into the playhead for detailed trimming work, then zoom out to see your clips in context for the purpose of choosing edit points and making selections. There are several ways Resolve gives you for zooming. Drag on the toolbar slider to zoom in or out. The playhead always stays centered as you zoom. An even faster option is to use keyboard shortcuts. Press Command+ to zoom in, or Control+ on Windows, and Command- to zoom out. The best method, however, is to use a mouse with a scroll wheel, also known as a 3-button mouse. It's called a 3-button mouse because the scroll wheel itself is a button that is used for various tasks in the color page. While you can edit without one, by the end of this tutorial, I'm going to have you convinced that you can't live without one. Hold down the Option key and use the scroll wheel to zoom in or out. Another benefit is that by holding down the Shift key and placing your pointer in the video track area, you can use the scroll wheel to increase or decrease the track height. The same is true for the audio tracks. Just make sure your pointer is in the audio track area before shift scrolling. If you want to fit all of your clips into the timeline window, click this button or press Shift-Z. To move the play to the beginning of the timeline, press the Home key. On Apple laptops, you may need to use the key combination, Function left arrow. The function key is labeled FN on your keyboard. In order to move the playhead from cut to cut, use the up and down arrow keys. Press the down arrow to move the playhead forward one edit point at a time, and the up arrow to move it backward one edit at a time. J, K, and L shuttling also works in the timeline. Take a few moments to play back the entire cut to get a feel for the story. Now it's time to deal with those jump cuts, starting with the first one. Make sure the playhead is parked on the edit point between our first two interview clips. So it's easier to locate clips based on images, set the media pool back to thumbnail view, then select the B-roll bin. Double-click the old building clip to load it into the source viewer. If you look in the upper left of the viewer, you'll see the duration of the clip. It's just over 7.5 seconds. Drag the jog bar playhead until the timecode reads 15 seconds, then press I to mark an endpoint. During editing, it's often faster to use the keyboard. If you look at the duration field in the upper left of the viewer, the duration reads 6 seconds and 12 frames. This is the total duration from the in point to the end of the clip. I would like this clip's out point to be marked at 3 seconds from the in point. To move the playhead forward 3 seconds, I can enter an offset number. Type +3 followed by a period. The period key is a placeholder for zeros. Now press Enter to jump the playhead forward, then press O to mark an out point. The duration field now reads 3 seconds and 1 frame. This may seem odd, but you'll need to remember that the playhead itself takes up 1 frame in the clip. Press the left arrow to back off 1 frame, then press O again. Now the duration for this marked clip is exactly 3 seconds. Drag the clip into the timeline viewer and choose Insert. The clip is inserted into the timeline at the playhead location. An insert edit will move any clips to the right of the edit point later in time to make room for the new clip. The amount the clips move is equal to the duration of the clip being inserted. Because the clip we inserted was 3 seconds long, all the clips to the right of it were moved 3 seconds later in time. But let's say you wanted to insert the clip without audio. If you look at the waveform, there is scant evidence of any sound at all, just some light wind that we'll end up replacing with better sound later. So undo that step by pressing Command-Z. Now hover your mouse over the source viewer and you should see 2 overlay icons appear near the bottom, a video frame and an audio waveform. These overlays allow you to drag just the video or audio portion of this clip into the timeline or to the edit overlay in the timeline viewer, whichever you prefer. Drag the video icon of this clip over to the timeline viewer and choose Insert. The clip is inserted at the playhead location, but this time only the video was added and the audio was ignored. In the B-roll bin, double-click the old school bus clip to load it into the source viewer. The duration for this clip is 3 seconds and 4 frames. If you don't mark in and out points, Resolve will use the entire clip when you perform an edit. Notice that the timeline playhead is parked at the end of the previously inserted clip. This is where we'll insert this bus shot. Instead of dragging the clip into the timeline viewer, click the Insert Clip button on the toolbar or press F9. The clip has been inserted at the playhead location. This brings me to an important point. Most edit commands occur relative to the playhead position in the edit page and will overwrite or insert any clip that the playhead is parked over. Unlike the playhead behavior in the cut page, you have to be very precise with the playhead placement in the edit page, otherwise your edits may not land where you intend. For example, if the playhead is positioned near an edit point, or it's positioned in the middle of a timeline clip, the clip will be inserted exactly where the playhead is located. I'll undo that. Let's insert one more B-roll clip. Locate the Rusty Cruiser clip and load it into the source viewer. Mark your in point somewhere toward the beginning and your out point toward the end. You don't need to be precise. Click and drag the out point marker to the left while watching the duration field. When it reads 3 seconds, release your mouse. Confirm that the playhead is at the end of the bus clip, then press F9 to insert the clip. Before we move on, I'd like to draw your attention to the top of the source viewer. Now that we've opened a few clips, a drop-down menu has become available. This is the source viewer history menu, and it displays the clips you've recently opened in the order they were last opened. This can save you from having to make return trips to the media pool to locate a clip. In the timeline, move the playhead to the edit point at the start of the second interview clip. and press the spacebar to play back.
It's also known for alien activity. It's long been said that for the past 80 years,
While I like what's being said, the cut between the close-up and the wide shot is too abrupt, and we need to pull some editing trickery to make the edit work better. One solution would be to cut B-roll over the first part of the wide shot to hide the cut. Let's do that now. Park the playhead at the edit point, then press I to mark an endpoint. Play the clip until you hear him say, "the last 80 years."
it's long been said that for the past 80 years,
Then pause playback and press O to mark an out point. When you mark a range in the timeline, the section between the in and out point become highlighted. In the media pool, locate the bus stop clip in the retro bin and load it into the viewer. Scrub until the little girl appears in the left of the frame. Then press I to mark an endpoint. You don't need to mark an out point in the clip because we already have an out point set in the timeline. Resolve will automatically figure out where the out point should be based on the duration of the marked range in the timeline. This is called a 3-point edit. We're going to use an overwrite edit to replace the marked area in the timeline. However, we don't want to overwrite the audio of the interview subject. We need to hear him speak while we're watching the shot of the bus stop. In the timeline, you'll see video and audio destination controls. By default, the destination controls are enabled for both the video 1 track and the audio 1 track, as indicated by the orange outline around the track number. To disable the audio, click on the A1 destination control. In the toolbar, click the Overwrite button or press F10. The overwrite edit caused a few seconds of the third interview clip to be overwritten by the bus stop clip, but the audio from the source clip was not used because it had nowhere to go. Move the playhead back and play over the edit.
for alien activity. It's long been said that for the past 80 years,
To clear out the in and out markers, press Option or Alt-X. Using an overwrite edit is a fairly common method for making video-only cutaways. However, if I later decide that I want to use the first part of the interview, I would have to perform a number of steps to retrieve those lost video frames. This is why I often prefer placing my B-roll clips on a separate track. Play the next few seconds of the interview listening for when he says, "Family's on vacation." Then press the spacebar to pause.
for reasons inexplicable, families on vacation.
Press I to mark an endpoint. Now play forward, listening for when he says, "For some unknown reason, they just..." Then press O to mark the out point.
Would be heading to Las Vegas, and for some unknown reason, they just make a right.
In the media pool, locate the family drive clip, then double-click to open it in the viewer. Set an endpoint after the girl clears the frame at the right. Drag the clip into the timeline viewer and choose Place on Top. The Place on Top edit automatically creates a video 2 track and places the clip above the interview clip in the video 1 track. Any video that appears above another clip in the timeline obscures the one beneath it. However, because this clip was originally filmed in the 4:3 aspect ratio, it does not fully cover the wider aspect ratio of this timeline, and we see the video on the V1 track peeking through the sides of the frame. To address this, click the Inspector button. You were introduced to the inspector in the lesson on using the cut page. In Resolve 17, the inspector has been given a complete makeover with a new tab layout and modern design. The Video tab allows you to enable dynamic zoom, stabilization, speed changes, and image retime and scaling. The Audio and Effects tab are currently unavailable because the clip that is currently selected has no audio, nor are there any effects applied. One welcome addition is a new File tab that allows you to add metadata right in the Edit or Cut pages without having to go back to the Media page. Let's select the Video tab, then double-click Retime and Scaling. With the retro clip still selected in the timeline, choose Fill from the Scaling drop-down menu. The image now fills the 16:9 frame, though we're losing some of the top and bottom of the image. You can also use the inspector to make adjustments to your clips before adding them to your timeline. For example, I know that all of these clips in the retro bin need to have their scaling adjusted. Select all the clips, then from the Scaling drop-down, choose Fill. So when we add these clips to the timeline in the future, their scale is already adjusted for the HD timeline they will be added to. If you need to temporarily disable the clip on V2, select the clip, then press D for Disable on your keyboard. Let's add one more cutaway. Deselect the clip by clicking anywhere in the gray area. Then press the down arrow to move the playhead to the end of the clip. Press I to mark an endpoint. Locate the steering clip and double-click to load it into the viewer. Move the playhead to the beginning of the clip. On your keyboard, enter +1, period, return to move the playhead 1 second into the clip, then press I to mark an endpoint. Scrub until the driver looks like he's made a full left turn, right around 6 seconds. Then press O to mark the out point. This time we've set our in and out marks in the source clip instead of the timeline. This is still a 3-point edit. If you do not explicitly mark an endpoint in the timeline, the playhead itself will be used as the endpoint. Press F12 to perform a place on top edit. Let's play those edits back.
For reasons inexplicable, families on vacation would be heading to Las Vegas, and for some unknown reason, they just make a right turn on Interstate 95 and end up here. And they stop, they get out.
Because we're still in the rough cut stage, you'll often find yourself watching your edit and realizing that your first choice of shots is not always the best. So let's take a look at how to quickly replace a shot. Move the playhead over the old building clip. While this shot certainly shows the desolation of Nelson, it doesn't quite fit with the shots that follow. In the B-roll bin, locate the Texaco sign clip and double-click to load it into the viewer. Move the jog bar playhead halfway through the clip. In the timeline, move the playhead to roughly the same location, halfway into the clip. Whenever you perform a replace edit, you do not need to mark in and out points for either the source clip or the timeline clip. Resolve matches the relative playhead locations of each clip and replaces the clip based on the media that's available before and after the playhead location in both clips. In the toolbar, click the Replace Clip button or press F11. The clip is replaced. In the next lesson, you'll learn how to move, copy, paste, and delete content in your timeline.